Why do prices keep rising? And why does it feel like no matter what happens, everything just keeps getting more expensive? You wake up, you go outside, you buy something simple, and suddenly you realize it costs more than it used to. And not just a little more, but significantly more. It feels like something is slowly changing around you, something you cannot fully control, but you feel its impact every single day. And the most frustrating part is this: you are not necessarily earning less money. In fact, for many people, their income stayed the same or even increased slightly. But somehow, it still feels like you are falling behind, like your money is slipping away from you, little by little, without you even noticing exactly when it started. So the real question is not just, why are prices rising? The real question is, what is happening to your money? And once you understand that, you will start seeing the world in a completely different way. You walk into a grocery store, just like you've done hundreds of times before. You pick up the same products, the same brands, the same quantities. Nothing has changed in your habits. But when you reach the checkout, something feels wrong. The total is higher than expected, much higher. You look at the receipt, trying to understand what happened. You didn't buy anything special, nothing extra, nothing unusual, and yet, the price has increased. And this doesn't happen once. It happens again and again and again. Week after week, month after month. And slowly, something changes inside you. You start hesitating before buying. You start comparing prices more. You start removing items from your cart, not because you want to, but because you have to. And this is how inflation begins to affect your daily life, not as a theory, but as a reality. Most people think inflation simply means prices are going up, but that's only half of the truth. The deeper reality is this: inflation means your money is losing value. It means that the same dollar you had yesterday is not as powerful today. Think about it this way: if yesterday you could buy 5 items with $10, and today you can only buy 3, what really changed? Did the items become more valuable, or did your money become weaker? This is the silent mechanism of inflation. It does not take your money away directly. Instead, it reduces what your money can do. And that's why it is so dangerous. Because it happens gradually, almost invisibly, until one day you realize that your standard of living has changed. In the United States, this reality is visible everywhere. Families that used to manage their budgets comfortably are now struggling to keep up. Basic products like milk, eggs, bread, and meat have increased in price, sometimes dramatically. A simple trip to the supermarket has become a moment of stress for many households. People are not just buying food anymore. They are calculating, comparing, and sometimes sacrificing. And this is not limited to groceries. It affects rent, healthcare, transportation, education. It affects almost every aspect of daily life. And that's why inflation is not just an economic concept. It's a lived experience. After the pandemic, something very important happened. Governments, especially in the United States, decided to support the population by injecting money into the economy. Millions of Americans received stimulus checks. Businesses received support. Suddenly, people had more money available. And when people have more money, they naturally want to spend more. They want to recover, to consume, to live normally again. But this creates a powerful effect. Demand increases rapidly. More people want to buy more things at the same time. And while this may feel like a good thing at first, it creates pressure on the entire system. Now imagine this situation. You have more people wanting to buy products, but the number of products has not increased. The supply remains limited. So what happens? Competition begins. People are willing to pay more to get what they want. Sellers notice this and they adjust their prices. And slowly, prices begin to rise. This is one of the most fundamental rules of economics. When demand is higher than supply, prices go up. It's simple, but its consequences are powerful. And this is one of the main drivers of inflation. Let's take another very concrete example that many Americans experienced recently: cars. During the pandemic, car production slowed down significantly. Factories closed, workers stayed home, and supply chains were disrupted. But at the same time, people still needed cars. In fact, in some cases, the demand even increased. People wanted personal transportation instead of public transport. Families needed additional vehicles. Life continued. So now you have a situation where demand is strong, but supply is limited. And what happens next is almost predictable. Prices rise. And not just a little, but dramatically. Used cars, which normally lose value over time, suddenly became more expensive. In some cases, people were selling their used cars for prices close to new ones. This shocked many people, but it was simply the result of imbalance between supply and demand. This example shows something very important. Inflation is not always caused by one single factor. Sometimes it is the result of disruptions that create shortages, and shortages create higher prices. Now let's go deeper into what we call the supply chain. This is the system that connects production, transportation, and distribution across the world. It's what allows products to move from factories to stores. During the pandemic, this system was heavily disrupted. Factories stopped producing, ports became congested, containers were delayed, ships were stuck. And because everything in today's world is connected globally, a problem in one part of the world affected everything else. For example, if a factory in Asia stopped producing components, manufacturers in the United States could not complete their products. And if products cannot be completed, they cannot be sold. This creates shortages. And as we already understand, shortages lead to higher prices. So inflation is not just about money. It is also about logistics, production, and global connections. Now let's talk about something that affects everything: energy. Gas prices in the United States are one of the clearest indicators of economic pressure. When gas prices increase, people feel it immediately. But the impact goes much further than just your car. Energy is the foundation of the economy. It powers transportation, production, delivery, and services. If it costs more to transport goods, it costs more to sell them. If it costs more to produce goods, companies increase prices to maintain their margins. So when gas prices rise, everything follows. Food becomes more expensive, online deliveries become more expensive, even services become more expensive. Energy is like the backbone of the economy. When it weakens, everything feels the pressure. Now we arrive at one of the most sensitive and important topics: money creation. During times of crisis, governments often decide to inject money into the economy. In the United States, this role is played by the Federal Reserve. The idea is simple. When people are struggling, more money is introduced to support them. Businesses receive support, households receive payments, and the economy is stimulated. At first, this works. People feel relief, spending increases, economic activity returns. But here's the hidden problem. If the amount of money increases faster than the amount of goods and services, then more money is chasing the same products. And when that happens, prices rise. This is one of the most important mechanisms behind inflation. It is not just about printing money. It is about balance between money and real value. Let's now look at housing, one of the biggest expenses for most Americans. In cities like New York, Los Angeles, Miami, or even smaller urban areas, rent has increased significantly. For many people, housing has become one of the most stressful parts of their budget. Why is this happening? Because demand is extremely high. More people want to live in certain areas. At the same time, building new homes takes time, money, and regulation. So supply cannot keep up with demand. And when too many people are competing for limited housing, prices rise. Landlords increase rent, property values go up, and the cost of living increases. This is another example of the same pattern: high demand, limited supply, rising prices. Now let's talk about something that many people misunderstand: salaries. Some workers have received raises. Some companies increased wages. At first, this feels like a positive change. But here's the reality. If your salary increases by 5%, but inflation increases by 10%, you are actually losing purchasing power. You may feel like you are earning more, but in reality, your money is worth less. This creates frustration, because people feel like they are working just as hard, or even harder, but they are not progressing. And this is why inflation is sometimes called a hidden tax. It reduces your wealth slowly, without directly taking money from your pocket. Now let's explore something very powerful: psychology. When people expect prices to rise in the future, they change their behavior. They start buying more today to avoid paying more tomorrow. This creates a chain reaction. If everyone starts buying more at the same time, demand increases again. And when demand increases, prices rise even more. This creates a cycle, a loop where expectations influence behavior, and behavior influences prices. So inflation is not just economic, it is also psychological. It is driven by human expectations and emotions. Companies also play a role in this process. When their costs increase, whether it's raw materials, transportation, or labor, they raise their prices to protect their profit margins. But sometimes, companies go even further. They anticipate inflation and increase prices in advance. This means prices can rise not only because of real costs, but also because of expectations. So inflation becomes a mix of real economic pressure and strategic decisions by businesses. To control inflation, central banks like the Federal Reserve use one of their most powerful tools, interest rates. When interest rates increase, borrowing becomes more expensive, loans cost more, credit becomes harder to access. As a result, people spend less, businesses invest less, demand slows down, and when demand slows down, prices stabilize. But this solution has consequences. Slower spending means slower economic growth. Hiring may decrease. Businesses may struggle. So again, everything is about balance, fighting inflation without damaging the economy too much. Now let's bring everything back to real life. Imagine a typical American family. They earn a stable income, they work hard, they try to manage their budget responsibly. A few years ago, they could pay rent, buy food, fill their gas tank, and still save a little money. Today, things are different. Rent has increased, food has increased, gas has increased, bills have increased. Now they have to make choices. They reduce expenses, they cancel subscriptions, they change their habits. Not because they want to, but because they have no choice. This is how inflation affects real people. Now let's ask an important question. Will prices go back down? In most cases, the answer is no. Prices may stop rising as quickly. Inflation may slow down, but prices rarely return to previous levels. This is why people feel like everything keeps getting more expensive over time. Because even when inflation slows, the higher prices remain. And this is something very important to understand when thinking about the future. So here's the truth. Inflation is not just an economic concept. It is something that affects your daily life, your decisions, and your future. It changes how you spend, how you save, and how you plan. And once you understand it, you stop being surprised by rising prices. You start adapting. You start thinking differently. You start protecting your money. Because in a world where prices keep rising, understanding inflation is no longer optional. It is essential.